enjoy that, then you hold that for this little bat. Save the bat. Yeah, save the bats, man. that alone is worth it, right? This is another example of a pollinating bat species, and this one lives in the South Pacific, in the southern hemisphere. And this is a little ground orchid that this bat pollinates. And so far as we know, this is the only pollinator of these really beautiful ground orchids in this particular habitat. You know, he doesn't hover. He's not an elegant flyer. He's a little fatty bat. He's a little robust, round, fat bat with lots of fur and little short wings because he's just pollinating plants. He doesn't have to chase anybody, so he doesn't have to fly particularly fast. So he's just sort of like kind of like a Humpty Dumpty bat. His name is the woolly bat because he's really furry, and you can see the pollen is stuck all over his fur. All that gold on him is pollen. He gets on the flower and he crawls right down to the bottom of the flower and sits down there and just licks up all the stuff and eats all the stuff, licks off his fur, comes climbing back out and sits like this and rests for a couple minutes on his elbows before he takes off and goes to the next flower. What's really important about these bats is the transference of pollen from one plant to another, causing cross-pollination, which is an incredibly important part of diversity, keeping genetic diversity, not just with plants, but also with animals. All species, including people, need to keep genetic diversity in order to stay healthy. Otherwise, we start to get some weird kinds of diseases, and like my eyebrows fall out, and, you know, there's all kinds of weird things that can happen. So, in order to keep the diversity of the plants good and strong, these little bats that have pollen stuck to them, in addition to this one here, whose face is covered with pollen from another flower, these guys are transferring pollen from one plant to another and causing that cross-pollination. Here's a fruit species. This is a little bat that eats fruit. Lots and lots of fruit. This bat eats 2.5 times his own body weight every night of fruit. This is a small Caribbean fruit bat eating really, really ripe fig. Very important for passing seeds around. Every time he eats a fig, he's gobbling down all that fruit, but he's also gobbling down all those tiny little seeds that are in the figs. You guys eat figs? Crunch, crunch, crunchy. Fig Newton cookies? Yeah, they're a little bit crunchy, and it's all those seeds in that fruit. What happens when this bat gets done eating 2.5 times his own weight in fruit every night is he has to fly home, and boy, is his tummy full. And he's got to go poop. And he's going to poop all the way home. And every little drop of bat guano, which is the polite word for poo, every little drop of bat guano is going to land on the forest floor. It's going to have a whole bunch of little seeds in it. It's going to grow into more fig trees or more whatever this bat ate the night before. And so we know these bats are very, very important, not just for producing more food for themselves or for the wildlife that's in the habitat, but also for the people who live in these places. Because most fruit bats are concentrated in the tropics, where there's a lot of plant diversity, and typically people in the tropics live very close to the earth, and a lot of them forage for their food outside every single day. They'll go in the jungle or they'll go into the bush and they'll forage and they'll collect the food they're going to eat. Without these bats repopulating the forest with these fruiting plants, people would be hungrier than they already are. So very important, almost like a little farmer. Here's another example of a fruit species in the Caribbean. This one's eating an almond. This is a nice ripe almond. The bat's going to eat all the soft, fleshy fruit around the almond seed. Then he's going to spit that seed apart, the shell, you know, the inside seed, out on the floor, on the ground, and it's going to grow into another almond tree. Okay, so very important. You can see the beautiful wings on this bat. Here we have a bat that doesn't eat any of that stuff. This is neither a fruit-eating, pollinating, or an insect-eating bat. This is one of the weird ones. We've got several dozen bats in the world that we've discovered to eat unusual things. This particular bat only eats frogs. Okay, this one's in the Amazon. This is called a fringe-lipped bat. Okay, because he's got little features on his lips, like little skin folds and flaps that help him echolocate so he can find these frogs, he can hear better. We know that these bats predominantly eat just male frogs. And for a long time, we thought, man, this is really cool. These bats, when we did the guano studies, we were able to realize from the droppings from this bat that he was eating male frogs. All these bats are eating males. We saw almost no females. And we thought, wow, this is really cool. This bat's learned how to eat just the males because the females lay the eggs, and in that way it's protecting its food supply in the future. Wrong. Mother Nature's not usually that smart. What this bat's really doing is eating the noisy frogs, and only male frogs make sounds. So females are mute. Female frogs are mute. They can't make any sounds at all. So when the males are out there croaking and you go out at night after a nice heavy rain and you hear all that noise out there, all this sound, those are all boys looking for a mate. Those are all males calling out there. And it's going to be a lot easier for a hearing animal like a bat hunting in the dark to hear those male frogs, isn't it? So sometimes it pays to keep your mouth shut. You won't get eaten by a bat. Here we have a fishing bat. This is Noctilio, another bat from the Amazon. And this bat eats fish. It takes fish right out of the water in the jungles. You can see his mouth is wide open because he's echolocating. Remember, I said these bats' mouths are all wide open because they're echolocating, not because they're mean or aggressive. They're actually sending out those sound waves so that they can catch their prey. This bat's wings are warped. Take a look at this bat's wings. How you can clearly see those big wing structure bones. Like I was talking about the thumb, the forefingers that make up a hand. All right? This guy's warping that. These bats can move those bones just like we can move our fingers. And they can move their wrists and their shoulders and their elbows in much the same way we do. And because of that, they're excellent flyers. It's not a fixed wing animal like a bird is. This bat can change direction and go in much faster speeds than we ever thought imaginable. In fact, we know that there are some insect-eating bats on the planet that actually fly 99 miles an hour in level flight. And it's this guy right here. There he is, 13-inch wingspan. This species, the fastest animal on the planet. 99.4 miles an hour consistently when they're moving from a roosting area to a foraging area, when they're actually navigating. So it's pretty cool, really. You have to be big to be mighty. Here we have a picture of the dreaded vampire. Isn't he cute? He's not very big bat. This bat's taking a blood meal from the toe of a chicken. This is a regular old garden variety chicken. This is not a big, like, monster chicken. This is a tiny bat, not much bigger than Boris, usually 13, 14-inch wingspans. These bats predominantly live in Central America and some pockets in South America, and that's it. They don't live anywhere else in the world. And of the 1,800 species, roughly, or 1,400 species of bats, roughly, there's only 3 species that are vampires. Only 3. But they sure get a lot of press, don't they? They get a lot of media, a lot of Hollywood hype, a lot of, bad movies, really B-grade movies about vampire bats and this and that. In fact, I saw a few last night. They're already planning for the Halloween season. The truth of the matter is that these bats are very, very precise in their feeding. It is not a bloodletting, and it's not chaos like it is in movies. This tiny little bat is so refined in his ability to feed that this bird is sound asleep and doesn't even wake up when the bat bites one little part of the toe and licks up 6 or 7 drops of blood. The bat eats less than a teaspoon of blood in a single night. Okay, so it's not going to make puncture wounds and suck the blood out of an animal. When the bat crawls away and the bird wakes up in the morning and the sun hits the bird, it's not going to go poof into a pile of blue smoke or turn into a vampire or any of that stuff. That's all Hollywood stuff. That's not the truth. The truth is these bats are very, very gentle and very shy, and they're incredibly difficult to study because there's not very many of them around. They're very hard to study. Researchers in the Caribbean and in the Pacific, and in the Central America are having a hard time finding any of these bats anymore left in the wild. In fact, we believe they're right at the step of extinction. Now, why is a blood-eating animal like this important to people? Well, there are over 80 different kinds of blood thinners and cardiac drugs today that some of you may be taking that are used all around the world that are derived from the saliva from this vampire bat. People's lives, countless lives, tens of thousands of people around the world over the last 25 years have been saved by research that was done on this particular bat's saliva. Pretty amazing. Pretty amazing animal. So we really do owe something to even this little bat that is often vilified, and actually they're very shy as well. Colorful animals, silver bats with golden wings. This is all pigmentation in the skin. All right, they don't have color flakes like we see, or color scales like we see on butterflies and moths. This is actually the picture, the color of their actual skin pigmentation. We have little white bats that look like cotton balls with yellow ears. These are hunter and tent making bats, and they're common in the Central American region. And they're very, very tiny. They're little insect eaters, and you can see they live underneath the banana leaves. So we call them tent making bats because they live underneath the banana palms. Okay? Very cute little bats. We have bats that look like badgers and skunks. This one's common name is the badger bat. This is a bat from North Africa. It was actually captured about 5 or 6 years ago. A guy was misnetting, a researcher was misnetting small birds in the Sudan. And it was dawn, and he got this in his net. He didn't know what the heck it was. It was a bat, but he'd never seen one before. Well, the fact is, we thought we had discovered a new species, yet another new species. But after looking back into the collections in a lot of the museums and in the basements and the dusty drawers, we found this bat had already been collected over 100 years ago. And it was named by a researcher. So it wasn't a new discovery, but no one alive today had ever seen one. We thought these bats were considered extinct. But here, 125 years later, they are still here. They're just not very common. Now, a lot of people call it the badger bat. Other people think it looks more like a skunk, but he's a tiny insect eater. Take a look at this picture. This is on the researcher's gloved hand, okay? And this bat's taking up just the first 3 fingers of the glove. You can clearly see the glove there. So these are not big animals.
Was this one alive when it was found?
Yes, that one's live. Yeah, just sitting there, hanging out. We have painted bats, a couple species in Southeast Asia, as well as some in India. They're called painted bats because they're just so colorful. I mean, look at how colorful that guy is. It looks like someone literally took some markers or some pencils and just colored this bat in. All the little colored hash marks. I think they have every color on them but green and blue. Butterfly bats, another kind of species with the variegated pigmentation in the wings. This is another common bat that's found in India. And in parts of Southeast Asia. There's about 7 or 8 different types of bats we refer to as butterfly-winged bats, and it's because of this pigmentation in the wings. So, most people don't know it, but bats around the world, about 90% of the bats in the world live in trees. They don't live underground in caves like we all thought with Batman and all that other stuff. There are some species of bats in arid climates where there's not a lot of water and there's no trees, there's no forests, that live underground. That is true. There are some species of bats in extreme northern climates that go underground to hibernate during the winter. That is true. But those bats are not the norm. The norm is that most bat species live in trees. They either live in hollows and cracks like these old cypress trees, which by the way, this is not a very old tree. Believe me, as the cypress trees go, that's still a youngster. But we were at Corkscrew Swamp here in Florida looking for a specific type of bat in this habitat. And that is about 2.5 feet of water there with floating duckweed on the surface, so that's not ground. We were in waders and we were looking for this bat and these bats in these vertical cracks. And one of my colleagues, who's much smaller than I, was able to wiggle into this crack. And you can see she's got a headlight on her head here, she's got a searchlight. And as she looks up into the tree, she carefully adjusts her eyes and looks into the tree for these bats. But you have to be looking for bats in some pretty unusual places. Some bats, like this little woolly bat, actually live in carnivorous plants, like pitcher plants. Some bats live in dead foliage, like palm fronds. You know all those cabbage palms out there that everybody insists on turning into that little haircut thing? That's not only bad for the tree, it's also really bad for wildlife. You are removing important habitat for bats as well as birds and small mammals and insects and lizards, and there's a whole bunch of animals that use our native sable palm, or the other word for it is cabbage palm, as a refuge. And a normal cabbage palm does not look like that. It's got a big group of green leaves at the top, and the lower branches are dying from the tips inward because the branches are actually sending nutrients up into the growing crown of the tree. If you hack all that off, you're starving the tree and it will die. It's only a matter of time. If you look around Florida, you see dead palms standing all over the place, and it's just a matter of time. And those big trees are expensive to replace, especially in gated communities and in golf courses and places where we want this really kind of signature Florida tree, and they're really, really killing the trees by overtrimming. So something to think about. Leave those fronds on there for our little friends who use the fronds. There are some bats in North America that do use caves. This is actually Bracken Cave in west central Texas. One of the largest bat caves on the planet, for sure. There's about 20 to 25 million free-tailed bats in this cave at any given time. Okay? It's a large colony of bats, and it's out in kind of the boonies of west central Texas. It's in conservation. Bat Conservation International protects the lands around this cave as well as the cave. The USDA, the United States Department of Agriculture, has placed a monetary value on this colony of bats. All right? It's gotten popular over the last few decades in conservation to put a dollar value on the services that wildlife provides to us. What service does that sand and that provide to us for that aquifer recharge? I mean, there's all these things that we want to put a dollar value on because that's what people understand in today's world. The dollar value of this single colony protecting crops in a 5-state area in the West is $7 billion a year. Overall, bats in North America save farmers and agriculturists $27 billion a year in crop loss, damages, pesticide and insecticide use, lost wages, transportation costs, crop insurance. I mean, when a crop fails, it's not just a bunch of dead tomatoes on the ground. There's a huge ripple effect across the entire economy that causes. And the number one thing every farmer or grower wants to do is produce a good crop that he can sell for the top dollar as cheaply as he can. And boy, are these bats important for that. Insect control that you can't buy with no amount of money. Very important animals for insect control. Oh, by the way, this colony of bats eats 250 tons of insects every single night. That's the equivalent of 10 Asian elephants a day. So it's a lot of insects. They're little bats that eat a lot of bugs. Here we have a city. This is Austin. Anybody been to Austin to see the bridge bats, the free tails? Pretty neat sight. You put it on your bucket list because you got to see these bats come out. It's really cool. And you can see it's not even dark yet. The bats are already emerging out over the water, so they're really easy to see in the summer. There's about 2.5 million bats, free tails, under this bridge in Austin. You can see all the people lined up. It's a big, all summer long, every weekend. It's a big bat festival in Austin because of these bats. The city of Austin makes about $25 million in a 3-month period every single year just because of tourism in these bats. People come from all over the world. I have a friend who got married on a boat under this bridge while the bats were emerging. And let me tell you, when these bats come out, they're just like you and I when they wake up in the morning or at night. They have to go to the bathroom immediately. And all these bats come out, 2.5 million bats come out, and every one of them's pooping on you. Right over your head. And this woman got married, and there was guano, and nobody cared. It was wonderful. They were snapping pictures, and there was guano in the cocktails, and nobody really cared, you know? The deal is that there's a lot of money to be made in ecotourism, and Florida has a lot of bridges just like this one that have bats underneath them. And they can be, if they're in a good location, they can be a part of a broader environmental tourism message for some cities and municipalities, especially coastally. All right, that's